Scipio Africanus, who gave his name to Africa, he was of course a Roman. They conquered a rival Semitic civilization, if you can call Carthage a civilization, because a civilization means to have some sort of norms of civilized behaviour as well as living in a city. And of course, this is part two. Of course, to establish a Western civilization along the entire Mediterranean was what was the Roman project, based on citizenship, based on law, based on empiricism, and based on two sets of philosophies. That was basically the Platonic philosophies of Epicureanism, which gave us the scientific method, which means that you can only reduce the margin of error. You cannot know everything. But on the other rival but linked philosophy, the Stoics, who believed that you could go out on a journey of getting knowledge and maybe achieve everything in terms of knowing everything. So those two rival ideas are given a tension that has underpinned all the other major philosophies that Western rationalism has developed. Now, when you've got situations where that sort of thinking can develop, say for instance in ancient China or in Europe, where there is a great deal of innovation, I mean, take the Romans, they had everything to build a steam engine, they knew the concepts, but it was just unlucky that nobody ever brought all the different tools that they already had available in their toolkits together to build it. But even in times when people, unlike the Romans, who did have central heating, who did have double glazed windows and everything else like that, a high degree of living standards, even for the very poor who were given subsistency, sort of a welfare, bread for military service system, as well as pay and free housing. So you've got sort of the basic ideas from Epicurean and Stoic philosophy of a balance of liberty and equality under the rule of law, which even the emperors had to sort of go along with a bit, which is a bit of a lesson to Diane Abbott, that the law of the commons, not just of Parliament, but I mean the general sort of ideas about conventions, which aren't written down in Parliament or in society in general, but we all sort of conform to some conventions within society. I mean, like take politeness, people have used that to take away people's right to freedom of speech, right? I don't want to do that to Diane Abbott, but at the same time, she is exposing herself as a hypocrite by basically benefiting from all the things that Britain has got from Western civilization, and then Britain's put its own stamp on it, or England's put its own stamp on it, and the other nations within Britain and Europe have put their own stamp on it in branding and everything else, and technological and philosophical development, science, and scientific discovery. She's got all the benefits of that. She's within sort of a subsection of what we would call the establishment in some cases, or sort of the multiculturalists are trying to infiltrate the social democratic establishment of the political class, the business class, and the universities, university system. But I mean, she's benefited from that. What can she offer but the thing that is going to is sort of taking away the foundations of that, in other statements. As I was saying about the level of technology and everything else within Roman society, when you move on, if you about 1,000 years, and Western civilization through the Renaissance, which actually means the rebirth, or in Italian it means to rejoin. That is the same word for reason in Italian. You're developing a standard of living in England. From my own family's experience, my great grandfather, I'm talking like 1800s here, lived to 91. That's when, at a time when there was not, and he only died because of a cart went over his toe and he got septicemia. I mean, he was 91, so there was many people. There must have been quite a few people who lived to a reasonably good age. If you take a rival civilization, richer at that time than Great Britain, Imperial China, Western medicine and everything else, and in terms of agriculture, the agricultural revolution, the scientific revolution, the industrial revolution, which was just sort of starting to build up, were there many Chinese 91 still working and running a business, or were there many people with sort of in their mid-50s or 60s at that age, which is probably about the general age of life expectancy in England? In terms of modern times, we have not solved the problem of unobtainable surplus, which means that a large portion of the economy is unobtainable because of price, and so it becomes wasted, and so also that means people lose their jobs, they lose their houses, and they end up on the street. But as they said in an Amazing Atheists excellent video on the Republican candidates, the commentator there said the homeless, even though we haven't solved the problem that I'm attaching to that situation, which he didn't talk about, even though the homeless are there and they are starving, the clothes they are wearing are much better than in quality in terms of keeping the heat in and the weather out than any sort of Chinese official or emperor. And that's all a product of Western civilization and Western philosophy, which underpins Western civilization. You look at, for instance, Afghanistan or Switzerland, the mountains there in either climate. They're both extremely difficult places to live, but one's got a massive first world city, in terms of Geneva, and the other is that people are living in holes with tents over them. Something has gone wrong with that culture's way of dealing with problems, and culture is only worth keeping if it solves problems, You look at the rapid change in the Japanese, for instance, before the Second World War, technically in terms of their maritime power, amazing shock to the Americans. But their economy and their way of doing things, other than that, was very, very poor in comparison to the United States in its general society. You had army officers who wanted technological development and peace with America being assassinated by militarist cults in Japan. And after the Second World War, although they'd been bombed back into the Stone Age, they adopted Western ideas as well and moulded them with their own brand of rationalism. So what we're talking about is a general rationalism, and they developed probably one of the finest societies and economies in the world. Japan is not perfect, nor even is Denmark or Sweden or any of those countries in Scandinavia or in Germany. There is still unemployed, there is still hunger. But then contrast that with Afrocentrism,